Stephen knew that the footage he had captured with his drone was special, but he had no idea just how special it actually was, because what he assumed would only get him a few likes online turned out to help solve a mystery that had gone unexplained for 500 years. And a lot of people did not want this secret to come to light. Footage that he had captured with his drone proved it beyond a shadow of a doubt. And he was ready to show this bombshell to the world, but what did Stephen capture on his drone footage? What was this strange 500-year-old story, and why did the locals want to keep the truth about a secret? He will find out soon enough, but before we start our story, smash the like button, make sure to subscribe, and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. Stephen could have never predicted the impact his footage from that day would have. He had gone out into the mountain with the intention of getting some great aerial shots for the mountaintops that were now surprisingly devoid of snow. He was working on a documentary about climate change and wanted to use this drone footage as an illustration for a section about the temperature increasing to snow-melting highs in the normal ice and ice-cold mountains. But the footage would eventually never make it into any film or documentary. Stephen had gone out into the mountains alone that day. He was in Nepal with a small crew associated with the documentary. The rest of them had interviews with locals scheduled today, so Stephen decided this would be the best use of his time. After 3 hours of journeying up into the mountains, he let his drone fly free. He needed to get as far and high into the mountains as possible to get the best shot, so he spent 25 minutes flying in that trajectory. Stephen had 10 minutes to shoot as much footage as possible, so there was no time to be wasted. Every shot needed to be right on the first time, so Stephen did not have time to look closely at what he was filming during the flight. But something did still stand out to him. He was looking for mountains with as little snow as possible, and one small mountain range did seem to stand out to him from afar because you could see a lot of snowless rock. It was seemingly the perfect shot for the movie, but when the drone hovered above it, Stephen noticed there was something else strange about it. Stephen was a man on a mission. He'd made the trip with friends and some colleagues, but Stephen knew that each of them would be set on making their own discovery. This meant he'd looked at several aerial pictures to get a better understanding. But this was like nothing he'd ever seen. A goddess. Stephen could barely believe his eyes. He scanned the camera lens, wiping at it to make sure the view in front of him was real. The more he wiped, the less convinced he was, but nothing changed. It seemed almost too good to believe. The shape in front of him resembled a sleeping woman. He thought to himself, mystified. He watched the image come into focus as he moved his drone around some more. But nothing changed. The image stayed the same. Now he was confused for a completely different reason. If he didn't imagine things, why was this the first he had ever seen of it? Surely something so amazing would have been well documented by now, but Stephen was quickly pulled away to something more alarming. At first he was too occupied with the image on the screen to notice the flashing red light, but soon the accompanying beep darted him from his thoughts. His battery was low! It was a sharp jerk to reality. Looking at the number, it read 40%. If his drone was going to make it back, he would need to turn off the camera and steer it back. Stephen couldn't fight the excitement as he steered the drone back. He'd brought an extra pack of batteries and would switch them for more shots, but for now the images would be more than enough. Soon he would share the evidence of the Sleeping Beauty that rested above the mountains. He knew it would be great, but never expected the results. Stephen had shut off the camera to ensure the drone made it safely down, but even that wasn't enough to get it safely back to him. The battery died and the drone fell into the snow. Stephen sighed in frustration, but was glad he could make the hike up to the drone. But what he found left him even more stunned. It took about an hour for Stephen to get to the top. He was exhausted and out of breath. Kneeling, he let himself relax for a moment before searching for his drone with his eyes. But instead of his expensive equipment, his eyes landed on a middle-aged woman dressed in thick traditional clothes. and she did not look pleased to see him. Stephen knew that a few tribes lived up in the mountains, but had no interaction with them. He wanted to explain himself, but she began to yell in a foreign language. Stephen did not understand a word she was saying, but it was clear from her tone that she was furious. She stretched her hands, and that's when he saw it. In her hands was a stick of some kind, and she waved it and yelled, but that was not what Stephen's eyes had settled on. Stephen was transfixed on the object behind her. His drone was smashed into tiny pieces in the snow. This strange woman had destroyed months of his savings, and he had no idea why. At this point, Stephen had equally lost his temper. The two of them were now yelling at each other in languages that were foreign to the other. But neither of them backed down. Stephen was furious about his expensive equipment, and the lady was furious about his presence. But things took an unexpected turn. The lady pulled out an axe. Stephen was stunned into silence. This had gone far beyond an angry spat, and his life felt in danger. Seeing no other way around it, he took a leap of faith and crouched down into a ball as he slid off the top of the cliff, using the snow as a natural sled. He prayed he would make it down safely. Luckily, the mountain was steeped in snow, making a bumpy but nonetheless safe ride down. By the time he made it down, Stephen had lost his drone, the batteries, and admittedly some of his manly pride, but he was safe, and thankfully, the footage from the drone was as well because he'd set it to automatically upload to the cloud. The walk back to his lodge was stressful, and Stephen felt frazzled. He still wasn't sure what about him had angered her. Perhaps he'd crossed into her private territory? He admitted to himself that yelling at her in a foreign language had likely made it worse, but that was a mystery for another day. For now, he had one goal. The lodge was warm, and Stephen was glad to be back in the town with warm water and no angry women holding axes. He still could not believe the turn his day had taken. Checking the footage on his laptop, he was glad it had been saved. It was a long day, and he needed some rest, but not before he did one last thing. Stephen dragged himself out of bed to the sound of loud pounding against his room door. He had asked to not be disturbed as he wanted to sleep in, so he assumed it was one of his colleagues coming to discuss something important. But it was unexpected guests. When Stephen looked through the hole in the door, he saw that there was a bunch of local police waiting for him, and they did not look happy at all. From the agents' facial expressions, Stephen sees that they are under great stress. One of the agents even stands with his hand on his gun, ready to shoot. A bit afraid, Stephen asked them what they wanted through the door. He would not open the door if they did not reveal it to him. But then he got the warning that they would kick in the door if he did not open it in 5 seconds. He had no choice. Stephen had to make a decision in a split second. He quickly grabbed his to-go bag, which he had readied the night before, and jumped out the hotel room window onto the fire escape. He did not expect that jump to be so high. Upon landing, his ankles hurt considerably, but he escaped. He quickly made his way down as he heard his door being beaten down. He had no idea what these people wanted, but it could not be good. Could it have something to do with the drone footage he shot yesterday? First the strange woman, now the local police. Something was going on here, and the only way Stephen could think of figuring it out was to see the footage. Startled, he wondered if he had his phone. Luckily, he did. He found a hidden spot and played the footage, making sure no one noticed. At first, nothing stood out, until the mountain range caught his eye. Its shape stirred a memory. He had seen this formation before, in a story told for over 500 years about a hidden place in these mountains. Locals dismissed it as myth, but now Stephen wasn't so sure. Maybe melting snow had exposed what was once believed not to exist, a mountain with a cave near its head. The locals' extreme reactions made Stephen believe the legend was true. He needed real proof, and the only way was to find the cave. He quickly bought winter clothes and supplies from a non-local shop to avoid raising suspicion. Despite the tighter police presence, Stephen carefully avoided main routes and made his way unnoticed toward the mountains. Once clear of the locals, the journey through the icy plains began. But even well-prepared, Stephen struggled. One of his toes froze slightly, forcing him to stop and warm it before moving on. He remained anxious that the locals or police might find him. But luck was on his side. After over 20 hours of trekking, Stephen reached the mountain's head. Searching didn't take long, just like in the story. A cave was there. Overcome with curiosity, he approached, only to spot a group of 15 people wearing traditional clothing moving toward him. Stephen faced a choice: flee or enter the cave and risk capture. Without hesitation, he ran inside, hearing the group shouting behind him. Deeper into the cave, nearly blind in the darkness, he pressed on. After about 5 minutes, his flashlight revealed what he'd hoped for: golden treasures hidden deep inside the mountain, just as the legend described. Quickly, Stephen snapped a photo, preparing to share it. But at that crucial moment, his phone crashed. Panic set in. He locked and unlocked it. Thankfully, it worked. As he was about to send the picture, he heard commotion behind him. The locals rushed in, shouting, "Don't send the picture!" Stephen assured them he hadn't. They listened as he explained he only wanted to reveal the treasure to the world. However, the locals didn't seek fame or fortune. They only wanted to protect their ancestors' legacy. Stephen understood. They struck a deal. He would leave without publishing anything, and they would move the treasure to a secure location hidden from outsiders forever. Stephen left the cave, beginning the long journey back. He may not have pictures or treasure, but he had an incredible story to tell his friends and family.